My name is Rajaa Mekouar. I moved to Luxembourg 3.5 years ago from London, and I have a 15-year experience in private equity. Over the last 8 to 10 years, I've been working mostly with families, doing direct investments and co-investments. And at the moment, I represent a Luxembourgish family for whom I run the private equity division. And we do a lot of small and mid-cap investments in companies around the world with a particular focus on Europe, but we also look at Asia and the US opportunistically. I represent the interests of the private equity industry, which are gathered under the LPEA. So the LPEA is Luxembourg Private Equity and Venture Capital Association. It's 10 years old and it now counts about 220 members. Half of them are investors and the other half are service providers or advisors, so the usual big four, law firms and all kinds of advisors to the private equity industry. Our role is to promote Luxembourg as a hub for private equity in Europe and internationally. And the motto that we developed for us is to say that we are here to match talent and money. Why? Because if you look at any financial place that succeeded over the long term, whether it's Singapore or London or New York or Hong Kong, is they're successful at putting together the money and the talent. And I would argue that Luxembourg has both on a smaller scale. And in the era of digitalization and globalization, you don't need to be physically a big country, you just need to have the skills. And there's a very strong ecosystem here of both. The private equity industry has grown a lot in the last 10 years. Traditionally, it was the big LBO funds or buyout funds from the US and from Europe that used to be the main players. But because of the growing specialization of the industry, you now have many other types of players that are not traditional funds. You have more and more families, like the one I work with, that also want to set up a very safe and stable structure. Then you have direct investors, so people who don't invest in funds but directly in companies that are looking. Actually, there's a big family office from Korea that is for the moment in another EU country and they're thinking of moving to Luxembourg. And last but not least, Luxembourg has traditionally been a big presence for private banks, and private banks nowadays are more and more interested in private equity, so you see a lot of interest as well from them being in Luxembourg. And essentially, I always like to say that if you want to have an onshore, multilingual, stable jurisdiction to hold your investments and have a professional team on site, in the EU, Luxembourg is the only alternative. What I see here, if I compare to London or Berlin or even Paris or other centers, is in Luxembourg you have a coming of minds together of the public sector and the private sector. So the regulator, the government, a lot of public agencies are very interested in drawing interest and investment for the digital era of finance. The fact that traditionally it's been a banking hub means that we are naturally interested and able to build on these trends. And from an investor standpoint, what we see is that the whole value chain of private equity is going to be impacted by FinTech when it comes to onboarding investors, so KYC, AML, etc. But also when it comes to reporting, because more and more things in the value chain of private equity want to be digitalized. I think Luxembourg wants to get closer to Asia, so I welcome your initiative to go to South Korea. We know that Southeast Asia is very advanced when it comes to FinTech and in general to technology. And I think VNX Exchange is one of the players that enables to build a bridge between Asia and Europe. And we have a lot to learn from South Korea, I'm sure. And the initiative of VNX Exchange will help foster this interest and hopefully bring opportunities from South Korea to Luxembourg, but also bring us more forward in Luxembourg thanks to South Korea. So I think it's a win-win situation.